This segment is sponsored by Llano County Historical Museum. Welcome back to Road Trippin' Llano. Founded more than 165 years ago, this hill country town has a unique history and heritage, and the Llano County Historical Museum is dedicated to keeping the archives alive. Even the museum building itself has a fascinating story. Check it out.
The Brules had the drugstore, and when they decided to go out of business, they decided that Llano needed a museum. And so they were kind enough to give us the museum. You find a lot of the history of Llano County, and we've got, because we are known for our rocks and minerals, we have a great collection in our rock room, arrowheads and other kind of rocks that are found in Llano. Then we have a military display, have many uniforms because there are many of the men that served in the wars that lived here in Llano. Things that people have donated to the museum, given us to show some of the primitive history as well as just the history in general of Llano. And the people go out the back door back here. You've got a beautiful view of the river, the water coming over the dam. And it's a beautiful place to be. We tell a lot of the stories about, like, local things now are like fiddle fests and things like that. We've got a big display here on the Fiddle Fest that we have yearly, and it's always the first weekend in April. So we've just got much history.
The judge and the mayor declared the month of May as Family History Month here in Llano County. And people brought in their books, their stories. We've done a lot of interviews because they're not going to write it down. And we don't want that heritage gone. People want to know their heritage. They want to know where they got their eyes from, or what kind of person was great Uncle Charlie. What we're doing and why it's so important is they bring the information in to us, we digitize it, give them the original back. We have it on our databases. They have it on a little thumb drive, plus the original.
We are open Wednesday through Saturday from 10 to 4. Outside of those hours, we can also make arrangements for people to see the museum. We think we have a great place to explore the history of Llano County. We would love to see you come in and see the history of the museum that we have preserved.
It's so interesting. As you can see, the Llano County Historical Museum is committed to preserving the past for future generations, and I think that's so important to come. Joanne McDougall is here, Secretary for the museum, with more about that. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm a bit of a history buff, and I do love to seek out a place's history when I'm visiting, especially because it helps you enjoy the present so much more, right?
Right.
I think that's pretty cool. Tell us a little bit about some of the contents that you have in the museum.
Okay, we've got a covered wagon, for
nice.
one thing. It was used out on a ranch, and it was bought from Buttery Hardware, which is still a local business.
Yeah, still in business.
Who's been in business for over 100 years here.
That's incredible.
So that's one of our features. We have a display on Cecil Smith, who was a well-known polo player. And he grew up in Llano.
How about that?
And trained polo ponies around, and he got to be a very famous polo player.
Wow.
So there's a big polo display over there. And then we had several typewriters. We have the man that invented the electric typewriter, Mr. Smathers, lived here in Valley Spring, which is a little community outside of Llano. He spent many years trying to talk someone into the electric typewriter. They said, oh, it couldn't be done. It was a forerunner of IBM.
Right, yeah.
That took it on, and and finally did go with the electric typewriter.
How about
And then we have a lot of military display, uniforms and lots of memorabilia that people have given us that were in the military.
Wow.
So quite an extensive. And then we just tell the story of Llano over there. Some about the ranchers and some about the cattle drivers and the drovers that worked the cattle with the cattle and brought them into the railroad while we had the railroad going with the cattle. And so there's some displays on that.
Wow.
And then it was an old drugstore,
Oh,
so
okay.
we still have the soda fountain
Oh,
over there.
how fun is that?
Kids always come in and say, I'd like to work your soda fountain for you.
That is neat. A real great variety of history. Telling the story of Llano, I like the way that you put that. And I know on the property there's also a really cool structure. There's a log cabin. Tell me about that history. What's that?
The log cabin was something we sort of fell into because they were going to tear this log cabin down. And it was just a little old house over there on some property that Buttery was going to clear off for more warehouse space. And they started tearing it down and realized once they got some of the siding off that it really was logs under there in an old log cabin.
Hidden, yeah.
So yes, and so this was probably in the 1870s when it was built. So they came over and talked with us and said, we think you might be interested in moving it. And so we did. We broke down on the bridge bringing it over, and they had to get a grader and a forklift from Buttery's to finally get it off the bridge, and they brought it over.
And a great piece of history that I'm sure people love to see.
Is. Yeah.
Another thing that you're doing there at the museum, which I think is really important, is digitizing some of your photos and taking the past and making sure that it's brought into the present and preserved for forever.
Right, and in so doing, we have people that are coming in and telling us the history of Llano County.
Wow.
And so I've interviewed several people. I'm still in the process of interviewing one of them because he still has more stuff to tell me, more history. And they bring in pictures and we digitize their family pictures, and then we put it on a little thumb drive for them to have for their family too. But it's a great thing that she's doing. She has digitized everything that we have on the walls over there and in the museum. And we've also digitized the jail log, different things.
Fascinating,
yeah. Different things that are historical documents. So it's been a really good thing.
I'm sure you
for
have
Llano.
learned a lot. Yeah,
We have.
really important for Llano.
And it's important for us to preserve the history from we'll call them old timers, that lived here and have had family here since the 1850s. And so it's really interesting.
Yeah, and important because they carry a history internally that nobody else has.
Right, right.
And it's great
And we
to
think
see.
this is good for their families too to have later on.
Absolutely.
By giving them the little thumb drive. So it's a great thing.
Well, Joanne, that is really neat. I'm a big fan of the work you're doing there at the museum. How special. Thanks for preserving Llano's great history for future residents, because I'm sure Llano's going to keep creating a lot of good history.
Oh, I think we will.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.